10 men, 20 men, 30 men. I'm on something. 10 men, 20 men, 30 men. That bag coming. 10 men, 20 men, 30 men. You know what's up. 10 men, 20 men, 30 men. Yeah, you come up.
Hey guys, it's DJ Thorough, aka Thorough Zano, the bridge to the street. Right now you're watching the hottest in the street. But this show, it's not the hottest in the street, it's the hottest on Wall Street, right? So this is what this show is gonna be. Financial advice from a professional, an expert, Mr. James McDonald, Harvard graduate, James McDonald.
Pleasure to be here, thank you.
Thanks for coming through. Now, it's a big deal. You know, the prestige of Harvard and those Ivy League schools. I never actually met anybody, aside from, I don't know anybody that graduated from Harvard.
Uh-oh,
you know?
well, I better represent that.
Yeah, everybody I know, they dropped out. So, when did you go to Harvard?
I went to Harvard. I initially went to a state school in Maryland,
Okay.
played football, and I blew my knee out.
You look like a football player.
I was a football player.
Running back.
Linebacker.
Linebacker,
No, I don't
okay.
run from him, I chase him.
You chase him, okay.
And so I actually dropped out of college.
Okay.
As a freshman, I had a devastating knee injury. And I
Okay.
had to work my way back in the flow. And when I decided to go back to school, I wanted to go big or go home.
Right, okay.
And I worked very hard. I started at Johns Hopkins and I transferred to Harvard.
Okay.
And I ended up graduating with an economics degree in 2001. So about 8 years late, but better late than never.
Right. Now, I hear, I don't know if it's a stereotype or if it's true, is it hard to get accepted into Harvard?
So that's the colloquialism. It's harder to get in than it is to get out. But you have to understand, it's a place where tens of thousands of people have gone, tens of thousands of people have graduated. It's all about the inner drive, right?
Right.
And so here on this platform, you talk to people who are winners.
Right.
People who have grinded and gotten where they wanted to go because they had a vision. And,
Right.
and for me, when I initially dropped out of school, I said, you know, when I go back, I'm going to go to the best school in the world. And I'm glad I did. It continues to pay dividends.
Right.
And but, you know, it's the person that makes the education, not the education.
Right. Now, was it as easy as going to Harvard, signing up, and getting accepted? Like, what was the process?
No,
like?
I had to bang out straight A's, and
Okay.
I had built a youth program, and I was very, very concerned. So I graduated high school in '89.
89,
At the
okay.
peak of the crack
In
epidemic
Maryland.
in DC.
Oh,
We call it the DMV now, but back then it was just DC.
it was DC, right.
And I saw my buddies falling and no headlines.
Right.
Somebody that doesn't look like me, they may fall down. You get headlines. And I said, wait a minute, we're not valued in society like we should be. And I took it to heart, and I got with a couple of buddies, Ricardo Green and Dave Bardash, and we started a youth program.
Right.
And we put quote-unquote at-risk youth in internships.
Okay.
And it was very successful. Still know many of them today, 20 plus years later. And I was able to hustle my way into making some relationships with some key people.
Right.
But still banged out the straight A's, and yeah, I did transfer, and
Right.
it all worked out. But once I got there, I was so focused on what I wanted to accomplish. I'm not going to say it was easy, but there was no way I wasn't going to get out of there. So
Right. So when you went to Harvard, what was your initial reason for going? You wanted to major in a specific major?
So like I said, I started out in the nonprofit world, and what I learned is that you can help as many people as you want, but you ultimately need help
Right.
to help people. And I was out there raising money, and I got to a point where I was like, you know, it's going to be a lot easier for me to write checks than it is to ask people to write checks. And so I switched my major from psychology to economics.
Right.
And I knew when I went to Harvard that I wanted to be in the financial arena.
Financial arena.
And my first job was in finance. I ended up running a $12 billion wealth management group in
Okay.
corporate America right out of school. And so I got right to it, and I did that for about 7 years, and then I started my own business.
Right.
Doing the same thing.
The stigma on Harvard is you go there to be a lawyer. Like lawyer. That's the
Sure.
first thing I think. Harvard
Well,
law.
the Supreme
Right.
Court has been filled with many Harvard graduates, including the Chief Justice there now.
Okay.
So, yeah, but it's a good place to get an education. I mean, there's 175 libraries, DJ Thorough. Imagine that. 175 libraries on one campus. How can you fail, right? So,
Not studying.
but it's like anything else, you know. It's what you want to do internally, not where you go to school, not where you work, but, you know, what your own talent and what your own drive is. And I've
Right.
always been driven.
Right. Now, you have this book. It's called How to Invest in Bitcoin, correct? Now, is this the new Wall Street? Or is this the new trading? You know, as the traditional, you go to Wall Street, you buy, you trade, you sell. Is this the new thing in terms of?
That's a great question, and I want to answer it carefully.
Okay.
Never before has there been an investment that has garnered as much attention from as many people as Bitcoin.
Right.
And that is in the history of Wall Street. So there's nothing to compare it to.
Right.
There have been companies that have been extraordinarily successful. There are household names. There are businesses that have lasted hundreds of years, Philip Morris being one of them.
Right.
Philip Morris is the only stock in history of our stock market that has generated higher returns than Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies.
Right.
And so it is what we call in Chapter 2, it's the GOAT. It's the greatest of all time in terms of investment so far.
Right.
So
now,
it is definitely the new thing.
Right. Now, for those that may not have any idea what we're talking about, what is Bitcoin?
Great question. Bitcoin is digital currency.
Okay.
Bitcoin itself is a technology built on something called the blockchain. And the blockchain is a network of computers where no individual and no government and no organization controls the network.
Right.
And so blockchain as a technology has not been hacked. When you think about security and you think about technology, you worry.
Right.
Visa, eBay, Target,
Right.
all have been hacked. Equifax, that's supposed to keep our credit safe, was hacked.
Was hacked.
And then the biggest hack, perhaps of all, is the presidential election. We're still walking around wondering.
Tell me about it.
We're still walking around wondering, how did Trump win? And the Russians?
You want me to answer that? But
Well, I tell you what, what's important to this conversation is that it wasn't a secure election, right? And so when you think of technology, and you think of all the things we depend on for technology, blockchain technology is the first technology to come along that has been unhacked. Now, if you understand that principle,
right.
then you can build on it. And what Bitcoin is and other cryptocurrencies, they are digital contracts between you and I, or myself and someone else, peer to peer,
Right.
to do business on a secure network.
On a secure
and that's
network.
the most important thing to understand about Bitcoin,
Right.
is that it is proof of concept of
Right.
an unhackable network. Now, the second part of what is Bitcoin, it is a form of payment between you and I, or between myself and a business,
Right.
so on and so forth. And Bitcoin is definitely the leader when it comes to cryptocurrencies. It's the biggest, it's the most popular.
Right. Now, this is governed by the government. No one, they're not controlling it. So from what I hear, because I just got recently informed about Bitcoin.
Right.
Banks hate this because they say it's taken away from the banks because people don't need to trade money through banks or pay high ass interest rates to obtain buy things or
Right.
homes or whatever. Is that true or how?
So you're about to be the smartest DJ on the street right now, because everybody believes that myth.
Okay.
DJ Thorough, banks do not hate Bitcoin.
Okay.
Governments do not hate Bitcoin.
Because they can't control it. That's
I'm
what I
going to
meant.
tell you the truth. And
Okay.
the truth of the matter is, banks like Bank of America,
Okay.
banks like JP Morgan, banks like Wells Fargo have more technology patents than financial services patents.
Okay.
Now, patent is not a cheap thing to do.
Right.
A patent means you have to convince the government that you've got an idea or a technology that no one else can copy.
Right.
And those banks that I just listed, the top largest banks, have more patents surrounding blockchain and Bitcoin than any other businesses out there. So
Right.
the concept that banks do not like Bitcoin is a myth.
Okay.
If you look beyond the rumor, if you look past the headline, and you look at patent filings with the U.S. Patent Office, and if you look at where engineers are getting their certification
Right.
for programming languages, you'll see that the certifications, the patents, and the technology, and the capital going into the market from those financial institutions
Right.
is majority based on cryptocurrency and blockchain technologies. And so it is a myth to think that
Right.
the established companies don't want to happen because they're investing in it more
Right.
than anything else right now.
As a first-time investor, what would you recommend someone get into? Because I look, there's Bitcoin, Litecoin.
Right.
There's so many cryptocurrencies. It's like mind-boggling. Where do you start if you don't know what
so
to do?
what you start with is education. You get this book.
See, I threw the alley. You like that, right?
You get the book. You don't want to do anything that involves taking money out of your pocket and putting it into someone else's pocket without understanding it first.
Right, okay.
And Bitcoin is different. It's not your father's money. It's not your cousin's money. This is a totally new concept.
Right.
And what's amazing about Bitcoin and what's amazing about the cryptocurrency space is that more people from all walks of life are getting involved than have ever gotten involved in the stock market before.
Right.
I want to give you a statistic, and it's a statistic I heard about 4 months ago that blew me away. Ever heard of a company called Charles Schwab?
Of course.
Of course. You know why you've heard of them? They're the largest independent broker in the world.
Right.
Now, check this out. In 12 months, the main brokerage for Bitcoin is a company called Coinbase.
Coinbase.
In only 12 months, Coinbase signed up more clients to trade cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin than Charles Schwab has in its entire 49-year history. Now think about that.
That's amazing.
It's an amazing statistic because what it says is that people from all walks of life, people with $100 to invest, people with $100 million to invest, are all going to Bitcoin. And I wrote this book not for people who are steeped in Bitcoin and understand it and think they know what they're doing. I read it for the rest of us who are saying, wait a minute, what is this?
Right.
And how can I participate? And in the book, in the first chapter of the book, we talk to people from all different backgrounds. We talk to so-called Bitcoin millionaires, and we talk to people just starting out, and there's some amazing stories in there. I got a guy who's probably a fan of yours, and he's definitely a fan of 50s. He was a boxing trainer after he got out. And when I say after he got out, I'm not talking about Harvard, right?
Right, okay.
He got out, and he went, and he said, I'm going to teach people how to box.
Right.
Big dude, played football with him. He learned about Bitcoin from a childhood friend, got invested, and saw his investment soar.
Right.
He's a Bitcoin believer now, but here's the important fact. He would have never invested in the stock market. He would have never opened a brokerage account at Charles Schwab.
Right.
This is just one example, but there are millions of people like him who heard about it, got involved, and are happy they did. We interviewed a hedge fund manager, a professional investor. This guy was a Army Ranger. He has an MBA from one of the top business schools in the country, and he's a West Point grad. And he is a Bitcoin millionaire, but he said of all the businesses that he's done angel investing in, nothing has come close to cryptocurrency as being an attractive investment.
Right.
And that is why I wrote this book. I wrote this book because everybody's going to hear about it, DJ Thorough, but not everybody's going to understand it.
Right.
And in this book, first we talk to people about their experiences. We explain what it is, and then we explain how to get started. Back to your original question, what do I invest in? It really depends on your tolerance for risk. You have to be willing to lose in this game because it's the first inning. Now, I did some research on you. You have a son named Mateo, right?
Wow.
Oh, whoa. We're just getting started. How old is Mateo now?
13.
So Mateo is 13. So by the time Mateo is 21, he can build a multi-million-dollar nest egg with earnings from cutting the grass, with earnings from doing the dishes, with earnings from carrying bags to the car for the old lady.
Right.
We couldn't do that at that age.
Right.
Because there was no such thing as a security that went from pennies to hundreds or thousands of dollars. And you have to understand, when you ask the question, which cryptocurrency is the best, it depends on the individual, it depends on the time frame. We talk about those cryptocurrencies in the book, and I have a fund that invests in cryptocurrencies for people who don't want to sit and stare at their computer monitor all day, every day, because this market does not stop. It's a 24/7 hour market.
Right.
But for Mateo, he can go and get on a Binance or a Coinbase or another market with his Apple computer or with his phone and invest literally tens or hundreds of dollars in coins that are a penny and less, and have the potential to go to $10, $20, $30, $40.
Right.
You asked me about Harvard and the concept of big brain and other. I can't calculate these returns. I studied this market, and I've seen companies like XLM Stellar, like Ripple, go from fractions of pennies. You and I have never seen a fraction of a penny in our life. It doesn't exist, in traditional currencies.
Right.
This is digital currency. It's totally different. Investments for Mateo that are fractions of pennies, going to tens, hundreds, or thousands of dollars potentially.
Right.
It's stratospheric, and it's the reason why more people have invested than anything else in the past. And there are great coins to people invest in, but for that, they're going to have to contact me directly.
Right. So let me ask you this question. When I first heard about Bitcoin, it was about a year, maybe a year and a half ago. It was like $600. I think it was $600 for a Bitcoin about a year ago.
Right.
And I was like, "What is this?" I didn't know what it was. You know, like I said, I have no financial literacy when it comes to stock market and trading shares. I knew nothing about it.
Right.
I just said, "I don't know what this is. I'm not putting my money into it." That's what I said. Fast forward.
Now you have regret, right?
No, I have regret because now. Well, right now I think it's like 9,000.
Sure,
but I think
600 would be 50x now.
Yeah, I think it went up to 18,000.
21,000
for one Bitcoin. Whereas last year, if you put $600, you have a lot of money at the end of the day.
Right.
My question, I say that to say this. When's a good time to put your money in and pull it out? Or I know some people, people with money to play with, so to speak. Let's say if you had $1 million to play with.
Right.
You put $1 million to play with. You wait till it go up and you take it. Did you take the money out
Right.
that you made and then put the profit back? Like, what do you recommend? Because I put money in there and then I see it going down, then it goes back up, then it goes back down. What do I do?
That's an awesome question, DJ Thorough, and I want to give you an awesome answer.
Okay.
So I'm going to do it in two parts. First, I'm going to quote what we call a whale in the cryptocurrency space. That means a very, very, very big investor.
Okay.
He said to me, quote, and it's in the book, "We can't wait for Bitcoin to crash so we can buy more."
Okay.
Now think about that. I want to give you some historical references to answer that question. There are a few companies that you may have heard of that built the technology space.
Okay.
Let's start with Microsoft. Microsoft stock was cut in half based on prices from the dot-com era and based on challenges following its failed release of Windows XP.
Right.
You could have got Microsoft at about 1/50th the cost it is today after a so-called crash.
Right.
We've all heard of Microsoft.
Of course.
You would have never sold Microsoft and moved on. You would have bought more when it went down, right?
Right.
Let's look at another company you may have heard of, Amazon. At one point,
Huge.
Amazon stock was $110 and collapsed all the way to $10. Now think about that. You've put your money in this stock, it's at $110, it goes down to $10. What do you do at that point?
You panic, jump out the window.
Not if you're smart and not if you're thinking long term, like what will Mateo own 10 years from now?
Right.
Amazon went from $110 to $10 and is now over $1,000. That wasn't the only time. Amazon dropped by percentages of 80%, 50%, and 40%.
Right.
Even as recently as 5 years ago.
Right.
I'm going to give you another company, Netflix. Have you heard of it?
Of course, I was just watching a movie.
Do you remember when Netflix came out thinking this is going to be the best stock and the best company in the world?
Right.
Did you think that?
No.
Not many people did.
No.
And Netflix saw its price go from $8 to $2 at one point.
Right.
Now we're talking about Bitcoin's supposed crash from $20 down to $7,000 or $8,000 or $9,000 where it is now. That's nothing in comparison to what happened to Netflix going from $8 to $2 and then going from $50 to $20 all the way to its current price of over $300.
Right.
That's nothing compared to another company you may have heard of, Amazon.
Amazon.
Amazon is over $1,000 a share right now. But there have been 17 times when the stock lost more than half of its value.
Right.
And I'm not talking in the beginning of the dot-com crash. Just 5 years ago, Amazon lost over 60% of its value based on a loss of confidence. I bring these stocks up to make a point.
Right.
Cryptocurrency is not stock, but cryptocurrency is in the first inning of the ball game, to use that baseball analogy.
Right.
When you invested in Microsoft, when you invested in Amazon, when you invested in Netflix, you weren't investing for the single year or the 2 year where that performance was there.
Right.
You were investing for the long term. These are companies that would eventually dominate their spaces. Right. There was a situation where if you own Netflix, you had to hold a 50% loss for 2 years to get it come back. But that was when the stock was at $19. It's at over $300 now, right? So you have to think long term if you're going to consider investing in cryptocurrency.
Right.
I'll give you another quote from someone we interviewed. This is a songwriter, no financial background. He studied the market and he's bought coins and he parlayed his initial investment of $6,000 to over $900,000. And this is what he told me. He said, "James, there are many coins I regret not buying, but I've never regretted not selling." His point was that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you're going to get rewarded if you own the right coins. Now, owning the right coins should be left to an expert, in my opinion.
Right.
But if you look at the stock market and you look at the best companies where they have created the greatest wealth so far, if you look at the top 10 wealthiest people in America, you're going to see 60% of those people represented from technology.
Right.
You're going to see Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, a stock that lost over 80% of its value, as the number one or number two wealth person. You're going to see Bill Gates, Microsoft, whose stock lost over 60% of its value, more than 5 times, as the number one or two wealth person. You're going to see people who own successful tech companies that have stayed for the tenure of time. If you look at a company now that we're live broadcasting on, a young fellow that also went to Harvard, but he dropped out.
Right, Mark.
Guy named Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
Facebook stock has lost more than half its value 4 times in its very young history. It's only been public for about 4 years now.
Right.
But it's now catapulted Mark Zuckerberg into one of the 5 wealthiest people in the country.
Right.
So what is the lesson? The lesson is don't let short-term price fluctuations, even if they're severe, take you off the focus of the long-term track. And Bitcoin and the underlying technology, blockchain, has the potential, DJ Thorough, to be the most wealth-generating asset that we've seen. And this isn't something that I believe. It's something that the wealth community through institutional investors in Silicon Valley believe as well. And that is where the smart money is going for the long term. And so in short, where do you get in? Where do you get out? What do you do with your capital? You buy and you hold.
And I was going to ask you that.
And as prices drop, they become more attractive for a long-term investment.
So basically, I put my money there and forget about it, pretty much.
Not necessarily forget about it. I think that there's a vigilance that's required.
Right.
Because we now know in hindsight that Netflix was the best streaming company.
Right.
We may have thought it was going to be Hulu.
Right.
Because Hulu started out before Netflix. Right. We now know that Microsoft is the best operating system. We may have thought at some point it would be IBM. Do you remember they had a PS, a personal computer system? Mm-hmm. They no longer have that. We didn't know at the time that Microsoft was going to be the leader. We didn't know at the time that Netflix was going to be the leader. We didn't know that Amazon was going to be the leader.
Right.
Because there were specialty companies offering e-commerce. Who wants to buy their mops and their bleach and their food and their electronics from the same person online, right? We didn't know that those companies were going to be successful. It's easy to say in hindsight why a company was successful. And we don't know today which coins are going to be the most successful coins. But it's important to be looking. And if you're not looking, to pay someone like myself to look for you. Because there will be leaders that come out of this space that eclipse the value of all those tech names we've heard. Because money and the payment system throughout the world is much bigger than any of these verticals we've been talking about.
So the advantages of having this book, the reader will have a sense of what to do and what not to do, and a complete understanding of Bitcoin and how it works.
It's important to say that it's for beginners.
For beginners,
and so if you're out there mining coins and you're on 5 or 6 platforms and you're trading currencies back and forth, this book isn't for you. If you've heard of Bitcoin, but aren't sure if it's for you, if you've heard good things, you've heard bad things, and you've just decided just to see what happens, this book is for you. It's just 106 pages. We interview people that have been Bitcoin investors for years and have made millions. We interview people that have just started in Bitcoin. We interview people who are brilliant Bitcoin traders, and we interview people that are playing the dartboard and guessing. After that, we define Bitcoin in layman's terms. We explain how Bitcoin got to where it is, because it's important to understand where you come from to understand where you're going. And then we get into the mechanics of how to invest in Bitcoin, which is the title of the book. And what people need to understand is that it may not be for them. But rather than get not factual information from the internet, rather than look at advertisements to inform you, we put together the truth, the facts. We've summarized it. It's concise. And it goes directly to the point of, is this something for you potentially?
So where can the people that are viewing this, how can they get this book? You
can get my book either on our website,
which is
harvard-minds.com. So Harvard, then the minus sign, MINDS.com. Or you can go get it at barnesandnoble.com or amazon.com.
So this is it. So if I walk into Barnes and Noble's right now, it's .com,
not the bricks and mortar store.
All right, so go to barnesandnobles.com. Everybody has that. Everybody knows that. And get this book.
Or Amazon.com.
Or Amazon.com.
Yeah, a lot of people have Amazon.
And if anybody want to hit you up for maybe financial advice, I'm sure that comes with a price. But how can they get in contact with you?
That's a great question. I'm the CIO of Vishnu Wealth Management. And if you go to harvard-minds.com, you can see my contact information. So is there anything you want to cover that we didn't cover before we get out of here? Oh, I appreciate that. I think the most important thing is if you've heard of Bitcoin, don't dismiss it. This is the next big thing. You may not understand that because there's so much controversial information out there. But if you were at the first and second year of where Microsoft, where Dell, where Amazon, where Netflix, any of the companies that are huge today, understand this market already has eclipsed where those markets were at the same place in time. So don't miss out on cryptocurrency by ignoring it. This book is a great way $24 investment to get a great education on the entire market.
Right, and you're based out of?
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, okay, Los Angeles, California. So there it is, man. DJ Thorough, How to Invest in Bitcoin. Go check the book out, get up on your financial literacy, and let's get some money. Mr. James McDonald, thanks for coming through.
Appreciate it, it was great fun.
We out of here.